Good morning, and good morning, and good morning. How are you doing? How are you doing? Well, the sun is out. They said it's only temporarily. It's supposed to rain later on today, but it's beautiful outside, and I always love to see the sun out. It always reminds me of such happy times. The sun is to me happy, and in fact, over the weekend, I somebody gave me a duck. He's happy too. He's in yellow. All of a sudden this summer I love yellow. Everything yellow I'm digging. Although I am a purple girl, everybody knows that purple is my thing. But I'm just saying good morning to you. How you doing? What's going on? I had a good weekend. I don't know, I rested quite a bit on Saturday because it rained a lot. And so I didn't really make any plans to go anywhere or do anything. And I kind of chilled. That's normally not my mode, but it was one that was well received by my body. I enjoyed it. I just kind of watched TV, and I watched Coming to the number two America, which that's just one of my favorite funny movies of no, it's just nonsense. It's just absolute nonsense, but so funny. So I watched that one time, and then I saw the original Coming to America. So it was just a weekend of relaxation. I'm hoping that you relax too. And ironically enough, not much interrupted or disturbed, which is today's word, my life over the weekend. I didn't have any emergencies. I didn't have anything that I had to do, stop doing what I was doing and do something else. None of that happened. So it was actually a very good weekend. And so I am starting out with the word today of disturb. Sometimes we are disturbed by life. Our life, we live our lives, and then something happens. Something happens. It's not in our control. It's out of our control, but it affects us. And so how do we deal with it? And sometimes it might be, sickness for somebody, a family member, a friend. It might be a death. It might be, money issues, or scheduling issues. I find a lot of times that I single book myself, but somebody double books me by having me to do something else. So I've done that as well. But anyway, I found this poem this morning on how our lives are interrupted. And I call it disturbance of some sort. And it says, not wanting to be interrupted. And it was written by Roseanne V. Schwadiak. And it says, not looking for attention, not wanting to be bothered or interrupted by anyone, not wanting to talk to anyone. Just being at peace in this quiet sphere of nature, seeing the beauty and the wonder of God right here with this poet. Feeling God close, it says, loving how his perfect love is immersing itself into heart, soul, and being, a tempting taunt, wanting to go back to heaven, being at peace, totally healed and in serenity's arms. So, the author, I thought of this poem, was very much, had very much the realization that um, having her time with with God meant a peaceful time, that she desired no interruption. And sometimes our lives are like that. We don't want to be interrupted. We would like a quiet time with ourselves, a quiet time to pray, a quiet time to meditate, a quiet time to maybe exercise. And I have a few friends, they turn their phones off when they want to do what they want to do, or they turn them down when they can't hear them. It might vibrate or something, and if they feel compelled, they will answer it. But some they will do nothing with it. It's just their time of peace, non-interruption. I will not be disturbed. I always used to get intrigued when I was a counselor, and some of the businesses where I worked at had the do not disturb signs that we could put on our door. And sometimes, people would still come through that door. They'd act like they didn't see the sign. And, you would have to, interrupt your client that you're dealing with to come back and say, I have my disturb sign on. I'm not available right now. But sometimes there are people that might be handling the phone or handling, the access to your office. It didn't matter. It's like the persons that were coming were more vocal or more vigilant on getting to you, regardless of what it was that you weren't available for. So sometimes you have to pay attention to things that are interrupting and disturbing your presence. Um, so for me, when I break this word down and I ask, are you stuck? Periodically, are you in situations where you are being disturbed, but you don't know how to get around it? You don't know what to do because who's doing the disturbing is more, I would say, more vocal than you, more loud than you, more crash than you. And so therefore they're there, regardless of what you're able to do, you can't do anything because before you know it, they're there for you to have to deal with. And sometimes that's what we have. Good morning, Joan. How are you? Good morning. Good morning. Today our word is disturb. And I think I said in my little pre-statement that sometimes we don't have any, control over what disturbs us, but our lives are absolutely consumed and periodically full of disturbance. Somebody's coming, something has happened, we're needed someplace. And that's the way life is. It just plays out like that. We don't have any, as I said, any control over it. So when I ask that whole question of, are you stuck? Periodically, we are very stuck. We can't move very much around what is happening until we get what's in front of us out of our way. And how do we do that? That means sometimes we're pushed right into it. We must deal with it. And sometimes dealing with something that you were only had partial knowledge of or you had no knowledge of is difficult. It's very, very difficult. But anyway, what is it to be disturbed? It says that's when it says interfering with the normal arrangement or functioning of something. It's when you say it becomes like a disarmament. All of a sudden you are in control, then you're out of control. It says that there's a rearrangement, there's disorder. Many of us, good morning, David. How are you? Nephew up there, David and Rhonda. Okay. Good morning, you two. How are you? Well, Auntie's at work. I'm doing my thing. Today's word is disturbed. I don't bother you too much. I don't disturb y'all too much. But sometimes we have disturbances in our lives that come about. And so when we look at disturb, it looks at something being disorganized. We might have been organized where we were, but where we have to go to, we may find disorder. We may find confusion or a mix-up of some sort. We may realize that there might be a derangement or there's muddle. It's like a murkiness that we can't quite get through, but we realize it's there. It's a part of what's happening. We can't get through it. So when we break the word down this morning, my D is for disarranged. Disarranged. It says past tense because disarranged is in the past, but it's when all of a sudden what was orderly for you becomes disorderly. It says to bring or throw into disorder, to jumble things up. I used to have occasionally, positions where I was working with what I was doing. I was organized with because it was my doing. But then some other things were brought in on top of what I was doing. And then all of a sudden I had craziness going on, disorder, disarranged. Okay. Declare. Oh, that's a good word. OJ, good morning, OJ, my friend from undergraduate school. Hey, babe, how are you? It says when some things are disturbed, they release their nutrients. That's true. Sometimes the nutrients are good and sometimes the nutrients aren't so good. I agree with you, OJ. I do. I do. Sometimes we are messed up by what we become involved with. Because a lot of times our involvement may be that it was tossed upon us, it was thrown upon us. It's not that we were looking for it, it came. It came. And I believe that those of us who've lived long enough as family members or as husbands or wives or girlfriends or boyfriends or friends, um, teachers, whatever, we're going to experience this thing where people come to you and they may disturb you. Now, they may not think so. You only know it as something that disturbs you because you were already doing something. They look at it as like, this is my friend, this is my love, this is my family member. This is because they're looking at the fact of when they need you, you're there. When they need you, you're there. And we always step up to the plate. Sometimes the only reason we can is because we're in some way incapacitated. Something else is going on and we cannot do it. So, when we look at being disarranged, it says we put things out of order. We mess them up. And it says, in order to distribute, there must be disturbance. Right. Oh, that's good. In order to distribute, there must be disturbance. Yes. Yeah, because sometimes you think about that. That's really good. Think about a combustion of some sort. It reorders things. It places them in other places where it makes you have more understanding of what needs to be next. I like that. That's really good. Thank you, OJ. Thank you, thank you, thank you. When we move on in the word of disturb, we move on to interfere. A lot of times we would never tell anyone that they interfere, but they do. If you're already doing something and you're already obligated to something, but something hits you, like, and I use death because death is so needy. It's a required attention seeking, attention gaining, getting thing. You have to do it. You have to work on it. And I remember 2 years ago when my brother passed, I remember it just being overwhelming for me at first because I knew that he was sick and I knew that he was going to, pass on. But, I was expecting more from, the people that were near him because they were in charge. But it didn't work. I still had to step up to the plate of understanding that whatever I was doing was going to have to set to the side. I needed something else that was going to work for me. So, impractical. Sometimes we are given things that may seem impractical to us. Yes, Joan, that's true. Um, with interfere, it says take part or intervene in something, some kind of activity without invitation or necessity. But the necessity and the invitation come because they know and expect you to do it. And 9.5 times out of 10, we do it. We do what is expected of us. We rally to the occasion. Good morning, Maurice. Good morning. Good morning. How you doing, my friend? So when we interfere, when we've had an interference, it says it may be a butt in, may come in kind of like trying to be funny. It may be a barge in. It may be a nosy kind of thing. I was just over here and I needed you to do something. It may be an actual intervention of some sort. It may be encroachment where all of a sudden what you thought was somebody else's becomes yours. Why? Because they tell you they can't do it, but it still needs to be done. So a lot of things fall on us. They're given to us. And I think most people who are probably responsible, emotionally connected to the individuals or concerned, and love, because love will do everything. All of a sudden, you're in it, 150%. Even though you may not have the time for it, you make the time. And that's when you might be losing less, sleep at night. You may be, having to extend your projects that you were already involved in, and life changes for a minute. Life changes, and we realize those life changes happen until we're able to get back to what no longer is disturbing us, and we're back into the mode of production, our own personal production. Um, the interference also talks about it be meddling. How many of us have received things only because we didn't intentionally mean to meddle, but it happened? We asked the question. We weren't really meddling. We were just saying, how are everything? Well, all of a sudden, nothing's right and I need your help. Sometimes things start so innocently, but yet and still they become ours. Um, they just become ours, period. Only because people people know the people who will get things done, and they know the people to come to who will work. That's why, I always remember, seeing a little sign that says, if you want something done, ask a busy person. It's true. A lot of times your busiest people are the people who, because they're on what I call high octane mode of completion, and getting things done to a point where everything is workable and doable, they do it. They just keep adding stuff to the mix of what they're already involved in. When we move in our word of disturb, my S is for stress. I find that the person that is dealing with things that disturb them, come to them, there's also stress involved. And stress is a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from an adverse or very demanding circumstances. A lot of times we are the last the last town on the line of a train, meaning the train is moving, it's moving fast, but we're the last one to get the information as to what's really going on. And so we either address it or we don't, you know, or we get off the train too. But most of the time, when we get off the train, we're probably working stimulation. Oh, that's good. Because a lot of times we are stimulated. Once we get something new, all of a sudden we got more to do. And we put a process to it, Joan, that we do. We put a process to what's been given us. It wasn't intentional. Good morning. A situation. Come on, Ardelia. A situation. We handle situations all the time. All of a sudden, what we were doing, it's just put on the side burner. Now, I didn't say back burner, because a lot of us are going to handle multiple things at one time. Now, that doesn't say that we're doing the best of what we were doing with the one thing or the one or two things, because now we got a third or a fourth thing. All of a sudden, we just have to figure out what's the best way to address all three things and not let any of them fall, not let any of them fall down. That comes a lot of times with the stress. And the stress is the strain, the pressure, the tension, some worry, maybe even some anxiety. How many of us have been given things and we say, oh man, I don't know if I can do this. And we do it. We get it done. And it also talks about distress. When we're stressed, we're also distressed. We understand that, kind of comes with the territory. This has a deadline on it. How many of us have dealt with deadlines? Deadlines sometimes can do us in, only because we work for the deadline and we fall dead once we've crossed over the deadline and we got it in. I just remember many a time in my life of dealing with stuff that had a deadline. It could be writing something. I had something to be in. Even my dissertation, I remember being, so crazy, because there were deadlines after deadlines after deadlines until you finished everything. And no line that you were crossing could be crossed unless, in that instance, it was your committee had accepted what you had already done in order for you to move on. I remember those days. I remember it, and I remember being crazy. But I also remember it being a time of stress. And at that time, I remember my mother being sick, um, you know, and actually passing a year and a half before I got my doctorate. So I remember, the things that really stressed me out, took me down and around, but yet and still, I'm a believer in God, so He took me through. But to have stress, it talks about the fact that we may get distressed in the middle of our disturbance. Somebody brought us something, and all of a sudden, they left it with us. To bring something is one thing, and if you don't have the support of the person that brought it, it might be that it ends up being yours. How many of us have that happened to? When we move in our word of disturb, my T of disturb is for trouble. And I know they have the little saying out, the trouble don't last always, and that's true. That's true. But trouble can last a long time. It says trouble to disturb the mental calm and contentment of, to move away the worry, and to understand the worry, the distress, and the agitate. Sometimes we are very agitated, we are very distressed, and we have a lot of worry on us only because something that we were initially not dealing with, we're dealing with. It's ours, it becomes ours. And yet and still we take it on. We take it on because we feel we are the only ones that can do it. No one else can, or maybe no one else will, because you also have to talk about your will versus somebody else's will. Your will may work well, okay? Somebody else's will. So I'm not doing that. I'm not taking that on. That's not me. The others may be ones that they take on everything that comes their way. Oh, I love that turbulence, up and down. When I think of turbulence, I think of, plane ride I took, Ardelia, and I remember it. It dropped and then it went back up and then it dropped again. And I said, you know what? I knew I didn't like, all of these up and down kind of movements in a plane, because it just fed into me being terrorized, in my own concept of, am I going to make it off the plane? And I try not to get there very often, but it is what it is. So temporary, I like that, Joan. Turbulence, trendy. Ooh, sometimes things that we have come to us because there was a trendiness to it, and a time frame that says you have to finish this project by Friday, by Monday. To me, anytime you're adding just a couple of days to it, or tomorrow, that's a lot of stress, and it is trouble, and it does give you anxiety. It gives you, you realize there's difficulty to getting it done. Is it inconvenience? Absolutely, there is an inconvenience to it, period. It says, is it messy? Yes, it is. Plain and simple. When we're given something that we realize it has a lot of things attached to it and we feeling troubled, it's messy for us. It says it may be straining on our ability to not just get it done, but feel good while we're trying to get it done, or get to a finish line and the finish line says that we did a good job. That would be, troublesome. And it says it also could force us to realize that there's some suffering to it. Sometimes we've completed a lot of things. We've completed the race, but it didn't mean that we completed the race without being tired, without being worn out, without being spent, because we put a lot of energy in it. Why? Because it needed it. Good morning, Erica. How are you doing, sweet pea? Well, today our word is disturbed. And, occasionally we get disturbed by who we're dealing with, what we're dealing with. And so far, when we talked about disturbed, I said it was a period of where there's might be disorganization and derangement. There's interference. There's stress. There's trouble, which is the one we're on now, where we realize that with trouble comes messiness. A problem exists. There's unrest among who's doing what, when it needs to be done. There might be some strain in it. And then the overarching word is inconvenience. Good morning, Leah. How are you? Thank you for coming in today. Today, our word is, and we're still here, disturb, and how life changes sometimes. Not that we wanted it to change, but other things happen that require us to give our attention to taking care of things. And we don't always want to do it, but sometimes we're the only ones that can do it. And I think during our lifetime, we're going to find out that it doesn't come once. It's going to come. It may come for some of us every other day, once a week. It may come, once every 2 months. It may come once a year or once every 10 years. It doesn't matter. What it is that there's a disturbance of some sort. There's a disturbance. So the D is for disarrange, the I is for interfere, the S for stress, the T for trouble, and the U, unsettling. Unsettling. How many of us have dealt with things that we could go to bed at night and it was unsettling in our spirit that we couldn't even rest because we were disturbed by what was really going on. How can we straighten it out? How can we be the one who saves it, who rescues it, who knows what to do? Urgent. Oh, come on now. When we're given stuff, a lot of times it is at the urgent request of someone else. It may even be last minute. It needed to be done yesterday. How many of you have gotten those? I have too, Leah. I have, where it says, oh, I know I gave you this just now, but it needed to be done, yesterday by noon. What? It's 3:00 today. Doesn't matter. They came to you because they figured no big deal that I disturb them. No big deal that I'm interrupting whatever they're doing. No big deal. Or it might be a big deal, but they can handle it. That's another way to look at it. So I said unsettling. Sometimes when we are disturbed with things, it's an unsettling, causing us anxiety, uneasiness. Really, it says being disturbed, realizing that there's an alarming thing that took place. Yes, the ultimately death of my firstborn. Absolutely. Death takes us down. It takes us down. It takes us all around, because we're dealing with our feelings of the loss, but then we have to make the arrangements for who's lost, who we lost. We have to make arrangements. How do we do it? Can we do it all from where we're at? Do we have to travel? So there's a lot of what I call layering that must take place in order for us to do what needs to be done. But yes, Joan, I understand that perfectly. Sometimes when we're dealing with things that are out of our control, how do we gain control up here that also deals with our heart, so emotionally we can get through it? And sometimes the walk is troubling. It's very troubling. Undesirable. Yes, thank you. Mental and physical stresses. Absolutely. That's what happens to us when we're dealing with loss of that kind, especially. And I always remember talking to my mother when she lost a child. And I remember her saying, a father should not lead, the children should not lead before them. She just told me that the order was off. And I remember her suffering from that. And so each time, she lost children, it was, and there were 10 of us. And so out of each time, one of those children, and when she left, there were 5 left. But anyway, when we have this whole thing of unsettling, we understand that it's distress. It's also discouraging. It's perplexing, because sometimes we're sitting around like this. We don't know what to do. Good morning, Rhonda, Sweet Pea. How are you? Love you. Um, so we talk about how do we deal with all of this. Um, and then it says it's also worrisome. I always like that word worrisome because, it was a word that they would just more or less say that things were distress. My mother would always tell us that we were worrisome to her. My mother was one of those women, I always talk about it too, that she was a woman that, even though she only had an eighth grade education, she could read really well and she could tell you off with great words, and you understood where she was at. So yes, that would be one of those words, worrisome. Um, Urgent is good too. My R is for in disturb is rouse, rouse, that when we're roused, it says to be disturbed, vexed, or irritated. How many of us have been, and I'm not talking about the real serious things like death or something, but how many of us have worked with people, lived with people, um, gone to church with people. We understand those, what I call those close connections, where we have been basically roused. We're irritated by what they won't do and what they expect you to do. Come on now, you know. Come on, recognize is a great word. How do you recognize when you are being disturbed? Because a lot of times we pass over it easily. We pass over it. We don't want to deal with it, so we just say, I just pass over it. What needs to be done is address the issue, but we never address the issuer. Sometimes we do, most times we do not. So the rouse is to be disturbed, vexed, or irritated. It's when we have been rumpled. I like that word, rumpled. Dishevelment comes, confusion comes, disarrangement and disorder. All of that is rouse. And that is definitely what happens to us when we've been disturbed. No problem. It just comes. And sometimes we never concentrate on anything that led up to the issues that you are being disturbed with. We never get there. We go right into the issue themselves. We go into the main problem. We go into the main issue, the main thing that went down, or is going down. It could be whatever, sickness, a project needs to be completed, whatever. We go there. But then you ask them, well, didn't you know this 2 weeks ago? Couldn't you have brought me in then? No. Sometimes we don't come in until we're almost like the fixer-uppers. Life sometimes gives us, the personalities where we will do. Don't worry about it. We'll get it done. And we do that. We do it. We're there. And people know this, that they can rely on us. We're dependable. We are dependable. But here's my last word for my B. What would you put for B without me saying anything? Let me see if anybody comes with what I have for your B. I like my B because it's a little different. I twisted it up a little bit because sometimes this is how we end up with a disturbance. Yes, the fixer-uppers, dependable. Oh, that's good. Dependable. Yes, because we are dependable. They're looking for folks that will do. Balance. Ooh, I love that. I probably should have used that one. How do we balance? Somebody bringing us something and us taking it on. Sometimes we feel like we're trapped in the corner because we left ourselves vulnerable. And I have a couple of friends. They're like, no, I ain't doing that. Plain and simple. And they say, oh, when do you do it? Doc could do it. And sometimes I do. Sometimes I do. Well, for my B, I put to be a butt in. Buttin. That means you will interrupt, you intrude, you'll bring the conversation to somebody, bring the activity, give it all to them. Butt in. Okay. That's what happens. It says when, basically Someone or you will be one who will interrupt, cut in, chime in, interfere with, and intervene. Buoyant. Oh, I like that. Buoyant. Buoyant. Yeah, buoyant means is that, we have this ability to be, whatever they need us to be. We have buoyancy to us. We're going to flex it a little bit. We'll go down when they want us to come down. We'll come up. So being buoyant, meaning almost liquidy. Uh, uh, Rhonda, I like that. Yes. Good morning, Samantha. How are you? Good to have you. Well, good. Glad you joined. Happy to have you in. But our word today was disturb. And disturbing looks at how our lives are sometimes interrupted by other people. Not that we ask for it, but that they bring it to us. Okay, believable. Ooh. Because sometimes we are given stuff that we believe, and later on we may find out that it wasn't really the truth, or they only gave us a little bit of it and not all of it, or we had to go and find out the rest of the details, and the details were huge. The details were mammoth in terms of what it is that we could do or should do. Okay, so I put but in, and but in means that we will chime in and interfere, but most of the time the person that's willing to do the things when people come to them are not the ones that are probably giving stuff away. We pretty much have determined that's true. Burdensome. Yes, that's a good word too. Because sometimes we are burdened by what it is that somebody brings us, and we work on it. We are the worker bees. I always used to look at when I would do things with my daughter when she was growing up. One of the things I remember about the ant colony is that the ant colony, the queen, she hanging down, way down, in the living room or something, relaxing, while all of the worker bees, okay, they working, they're working. They are there getting everything done, protecting her. She has an army around her. Ain't nobody going to bother her. But a lot of times we don't have that defense. We don't have it. If something needs to be done, guess who's doing it? Us. Why? Because people know that we will do it. It's in the cards. It's in the water. It's in the tea. They say, oh yeah, we can go to so-and-so. They'll help us. And we do. We do. So I'm hoping that you like this word today. The interesting thing about me, I'll tell you my little secret. I can, yesterday I was given something that I thought about doing, and I did tell them I was going to work on it. And that followed up to, okay, so when do you realize that even though you took it on, that there's a disturbance to it? And that's how today's word came up. I generally would surround all of my words with what I've experienced, what may be going on in the world, what may be going on in someone else's life that they gave me liberty to talk around it. I'm not adding their name or anything, but that's life. That is our lives. Our lives are constantly inundated with things that will disturb us, things that will interrupt us, things that will give us pause, things that will hurt us. And even sometimes when you have a disturbance that makes you laugh, it's still a disturbance. A good one, though. A good one. Well, listen, I want you to have a wonderful, wonderful Monday. Pay attention to the heat. Pay attention to the tropics, because it looks like, not the current one that's out there, but something else is churning. And they're expecting that this year will be a rough year for hurricanes. So I'm going to be vigilant and making sure that I have what I need in the event that my lights go out. I might not be able to talk to y'all, but at least you all will know that I made plans ahead of time. And I won't be disturbed by the fact that I can't talk to you because I let you know ahead of time. But what I will be disturbed about is the fact that some of the amenities that I currently have, I would not have. But I love you all, hoping that you have a wonderful day. If you don't do anything else, take this video and hit share. Just hit share. No money here. Hit share and let other people know that there's a lady named Dr. Winnie out here just trying to make sure that people know that words are powerful, they have meaning, and they have extensive meaning if we break it down into like a window for ourselves because it's personal. Have a great day. I will see you on Wednesday. And I'm going to do Wednesday and not Friday. I'm going to do Wednesday and not Friday. I'm figuring Friday, everybody's already in that holiday weekend process, and I want everybody to have a good time. So I will see you Wednesday online, but I'll be out on Friday as well as you. Have a great couple of days, and I'll see you soon. Love you guys so much. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks all for coming.